irrigation system. Pipes that are in the ground have about a 20-year lifespan and cost about $1 million to replace. Bunker liners have about a 12-year lifespan, and when you do the math, it works out about $25,000 a year. And then the mowing equipment has a 4 to 15-year lifespan. And the way that Scott is doing it, which is very smart, is leasing, and that adds up to about $25,000 per year. Now that's in addition, and in addition, there's normal wear and tear on the other major equipment that needs to be replaced, as well as the buildings, you know, the roof, the HVAC, and so on. And I think the important part about all of this is there are adverse impacts on both revenues and expenses when you let a product go past its useful life or begins to look tired. And so the last thing, this is a planning tool. It is not a crystal ball.
Richard, what do you mean when you say autonomous or electric? It makes it sound like you're talking about the possibility of something like a, you know, the robot vacuum cleaner that they have nowadays out on the fairways.
Yeah, Richard, you want me to take that?
What?
Yeah. Ted, I'll jump in on that. Right now, they're in the early development of a lot of robotic mowers right now. They have a GPS sprayer that came out that's pretty positive. They have also done a GPS mower that can mow by itself, fairway mower. It's kind of in the early stages and really, really expensive as part, and it still needs a lot of fine tuning. But I think that's what Richard means on that, is that in the future, there'll be a lot more of that in this industry, more than people possibly mowing.
Like what they're doing with cars and trucks.
Pretty much, yeah.
Exactly. So the other interesting part, and you'll see this in the capital plan, golf courses have a lot of revenue leverage with relatively high fixed costs, which are impacted by inflation. But you'll see this in the numbers where in a very good year, so a good weather year, or a situation like we're having now with COVID, where there's high demand, you can really make a lot of surplus. So it sort of prompts a series of questions. Is what is COVID going to look? What is post-COVID revenue streams going to look like? And we'll show you a picture here, but over the last 20 years, revenues have been flat. So the question is, are we going to return to that flat line of the past? Are we going to see a flat line perhaps a little bit higher? Or are we actually going to return to perhaps some inflation-driven growth? So then the next big question, and we're going to cover this in detail, is when do these essential recurring capital expenses have to occur? Next big question, what's the timing and impact of the wastewater project? And the last question is, can automation lower expenses and deal with our labor shortage in the future? And where is my mouse? This is a chart that tries to answer the first question. So we've been looking at daily fee and annual fee average per hole in 4 different phases. And if you look at the far left-hand side of the chart, you'll see that during the period up through 1999, there was really good organic growth. Now, this is when the population of the Cape was growing by 3%. A lot of capacity had been added during that period of time. And then just around the tipping of the millennia, you can sort of see that the overall track which is sort of that big dark middle line, as well as the dotted dark line in the middle, shows how revenues over the last 20 years have been very stable. And if you look at the 2020 period, you see that COVID spike, followed by what are some of the latest projections for future revenue growth. Now, in the case of Brewster did put out a formal document which included their capital plan, and that represents their projections. The ones that I included in the package that you have are the Yarmouth projections, and then I brought out a ruler for the other ones. So you might say, well, why are you just looking at annual fee and daily fee? The rest of the revenues are highly correlated with greens fees. You know, so carts, range, all of those types of things are highly correlated. The daily fee per round is obviously a lot more than the annual fee per round. And we presented that to Board of Selectmen a couple weeks ago. So the relative mix makes a huge difference. So you can sort of see at the top of the line, our friends in Harwich who only have a single course have actually been able to get their revenues going up, in part because they are squeezing the number of rounds that their members play relative to their guest play. At the other end, at the bottom end of the thing, Dennis has had about half of their revenues coming from members, and so that they sort of bring that number down. Brewster is in the middle. They've been able to, they have multiple courses, so that is sort of a combination where they have about 1,200 members as well as a pretty robust daily fee. I think the other part of this is that all of these figures are well above the typical muni rates. So if you look at, for example, a daily fee muni rate, like even in Falmouth daily fee per round is under $40. So the other Cape courses are getting a very high level of revenues, which sort of suggests you need amenities, appearance, and a golfer experience that would be more like a resort level. And I think the last point is that margins are definitely being squeezed by expense inflation over the last 2 decades. I think certainly Scott would know how that squeeze is going.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question, please? Go back to that. So one of the things that I think is important when we review statistical analyses or charts like that is what is it that we're trying to communicate as part of this data? Like there's a reason for it. Like what's
right.
the?
So I think part of the reason that I was trying to be making sure that people were aware that there are 4 distinct phases we've seen in Cape Gulf. And you cannot just sort of take a look and say this one snapshot. So the COVID spike is the new norm. There was an old norm before that. And then before that, there was another norm. And what we really don't know is what that future norm is going to look like.
So this is an attempt at sort of predicting what that model might be, or using.
No, it's just sort of, all I'm doing is reporting the facts right now.
No, I get that. I'm just not quite sure how to interpret what's being presented. So that's all right. We can keep moving on.
Okay, so what I want to do now is switch to the actual framework spreadsheet. Again, I'm going to remind everybody this is just a discussion tool, but I want to orientate everybody to the rows and columns, take a quick look at some of the recent actual data, show you how the expense factors sort of go into the calculations, and then talk about how it can be used to do some what-if scenarios. So let me switch gears here.
And not only do we need to do this for just planning purposes and staying ahead of the curve, but we also have the big wastewater question and how much can we afford and time framing. So that's all part of the discussion.
Okay, I'm going to try to move slowly because I don't know what you all can see. First of all,
I
can
can see
everybody see the spreadsheet?
Yes, we're on the tab that you're,
Peter.
This, by the way, is about a 25 tab spreadsheet that is interconnected.
mhm.
So going across the top, the first few numbers, FY 17, 18, 19, and 20, reflect the munis actuals in this particular structure. Anything from FY 21, which is including this current year and forward, are projections.
Okay.
For purposes of this presentation, I used the same structure that Brewster had used. So revenues along the side are, well, you can sort of see what they are. There's also factors next to those which can be adjusted. So this is where you can do the what if scenarios. What if annual pass rate is higher, lower, and so on. The next group of columns, or the next in the row, is what I call cost of sales or contra revenue expenses. So they get, if you mix them in with your operating expenses, you can see because they are driven by the revenues, they don't necessarily, they mask some of what's going on behind the operating expenses. So for example, pro shop purchases are aligned with pro shop receipts as a cost of goods. Restaurant receipts are aligned with restaurant expenses.
So you're just capturing this as an aggregate data point that represents all of the cost of operations, basically.
Yes.
Then, yeah, okay. And so, for example, pro shop purchases would be inventory, right?
Yes.
Et cetera,
Inventory
right?
purchase.
Okay.
So the next set of, and you can sort of see each one of those has different ways that you can inflate or deflate the numbers. The next set of columns is the operating expenses. So wages, seasonal wages, benefits. I'm going to talk about this excess allocated benefits in a minute. Other operating expenses, liability, and so on.
Okay.
Moving down, you'll see the next set of numbers are the operating surplus. So basically, you take your revenue minus your cost of goods sold minus your operating expenses to get your operating surplus or deficit. Now, below that is all of the capital expense items. So each one of these, and again, this is just a start, but for example, so the first one that you'll see there is the Bayberry Hills restoration, 1.68 million 10-year bond. Now, what you start to see is out in FY 2024, you'll see the cost of that bond.
So is that the aggregate of the bond payments for that line item, or is that the interest paid on the bond?
Well, funny you should ask that question, because behind the scenes, there's another tab that does the detailed loan amortization schedule.
Yeah.
So this is the total debt service.
Okay. Yep.
So looking ahead, one of the things that in preparation for the Bass River project, we have taken a quick look at some of the facility needs. In addition to doing things like putting the roof on, we are undersized, significantly undersized for the scale of the business that we're doing, particularly in the restaurant up there. So one of the placeholders right here is for a pavilion, which would expand our abilities to support the number of golfers who are in site. Irrigation rehab, again, that's at every 20 years, you need to put another $1 million in. And bunker reconditioning. So if you look across FY 22, you'll see though, the assumption is that we're behind schedule. The links course was supposed to have its irrigation system redone 2 years ago. And the longer you go without fixing it, the more sinkholes you get, the more problems you have. So the real question is, and we all know that the bunkers are well past their useful life. So in order to have Bayberry Hills ready to go for hair on fire when we have only one set of when we only have one course, should we consider potentially getting a head start on doing some of these restorations, which are critical, not to mention things like irrigation and bunker, which are essential. Another one is parking lot paving. If you look at the numbers, and I do have it, and it was included in your packet, you'll see that we are undersized by probably about 30,000 square feet of parking. So this would be the cost of upping the parking size so that we are appropriately sized. Going down, somebody's trying to reach me. I hope it's nobody. No, not the top. Hold on 1 second. The next lines are associated with the Bass River project, so the restoration project. I broke out the pro shop different from the restaurant, different than the cart barn. There's a set of formulas that are built into this. I don't know if you can see that, but it's the number of square feet times the average cost per square foot inflated. You can see here the pro shop cost per square foot is 300 versus the restaurant, which is 500, and versus the cart barn, which is 150. So the advantage of doing these types of formulas is then this feeds, based on what your design criteria is and what your cost per square foot is, this can feed all the way through the calculations. Now this is not, I think sort of you get a sense, Scott and I have not finished all of this work, but I think you can sort of see where it's headed.
So is the purpose of this sheet then to basically establish a position for whatever's going to drive these numbers, like number of public full price fees that need to be met in order to meet plan, or number of memberships, or because we're going to you're adding on a millions of dollars in capital expenditures to the budget, right?
So we're going to we'll sort of work our way through. I just want to finish doing this math.
Okay.
So the last set, so that you end up with a net capital and debt expense, which then generates, you take your operating surplus minus your capital and debt expenses, that is your annual surplus.
Right.
Down below, there's a set of calculations that show you the debt service expense between interest and amortization. It gives you a residual debt balance and a cumulative surplus. In other words, if you take adding, so we were running behind the 8 ball, but now going forward, we are going to be banking money. So how big does your bank get? Can
you do me a favor and just go to the top of the sheet and freeze the first row so we can see what years are being referenced? Yeah.
I can do that. I think I can do that.
You have to delete the first row header there if you want to do it that way.
Yeah.
You'll need to delete row 1 first to get the headers up to the top.
There we go.
Okay, yep, there we go. Cool. All right, yep. All right, so in this model, we're going from basically in 2020 actual with a total surplus of roughly 300K. And somehow this plan is essentially going to include all of the new capital expenditures for 2021. And we've bumped our net income, if you will, to 1.4 million, almost 1.4 million. How is that going to happen?
Okay, so the big thing that happens, high fixed expenses. We've had a COVID surge, which has added a lot of revenue without adding a lot of expenses.
Right. Okay, so this is just basically based upon what we trended for last year?
A little bit more sophisticated than that.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I mean, I'm
yeah.
just trying to figure out
In
how I do the
general,
math.
yes.
I'm doing the math to get through another $1 million in additional net revenue. That's a lot, right? So
It
it's
is
gonna
a
come from
lot.
somewhere.
Well, remember Scott was saying that up until this point, you know, sort of revenues were 900,000 or whatever it was ahead of last year. I mean, we've already established that we're already in almost $1 million ahead or 900,000 ahead.
Okay.
Now the fringe benefit rate analysis is going to be come back, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And this is where the average daily fee per hole gets charted out. So those are my columns.
What is a fringe benefit? Is that fully burdened cost? Is that the
Yes.
idea? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in your package, I did send you some information from the National Bureau of Labor Statistics. That showed that for government employees, the weighted or the average direct fringe cost is about 35% of salaries.
It's probably about right. That's pretty average for most companies, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, this doesn't include, there's a whole bunch of non-cash benefits like time off and other things, but just the cash benefits piece.
Yeah.
The CAPE is a little bit higher. I actually did an analysis that showed that the CAPE is about 3% higher, about 28%.
What you doing?
Now we're going to go back into one of the lines that I just developed here, because our actual fringe rates were significantly higher than what they were calculated to be. So this excess allocated benefits line is something that Scott is going to have to talk with the accounting people about. So we have, over the last several years, been charged quite a bit more than what the actual expense would be. And when I say actual, I've literally gone back in and taken a look at the town's actual fringe benefit cost and calculated the actual cost per hour.
And just to make sure everybody's aware, in this category of 17 through 24, those are expense line items. So even though they're represented as positives, those are actually reductions, right?
They're reductions.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yes, we have always been told that the fringe, the benefits were assigned to us based on the percentage of our budget to the annual town budget.
Yeah, which isn't quite the facts, but that's all right. So again, early on, like these numbers, behind this is just that one number, and the next number, there's a bigger set of estimates that have been going on to say, okay, what if the COVID spike sort of that we've encountered so far, this for the 21 fiscal year, which ends in June. So we've already seen most of this revenue come in. We'll probably get about another 450,000 in the second, from January through June. So that's sort of where that number comes from.
So that's really mostly actuals as opposed to just pure projected, right?
Right.
So you're saying another 450, then we've already booked 1.9.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the FY22, so we're going to still, the assumption is that the COVID spike is going to extend at least through this summer, but we can't be sure after that. So that's sort of that's the calculators. So, but based on all of that, what you see is the operating surplus should be a fairly consistent 700, maybe 800,000. Now, again, that assumes that we get some inflation growth. If you flatten the curve and you get zero growth, then obviously that number doesn't go up very fast.
Richard, I have a question that's probably foolish, but on your projected daily fee income for 2022, 2023, is the possible closing of Bass River taken into account when those figures are calculated?
No, so watch the bouncing ball. So this gives you a baseline, a starting baseline, then
Yeah.
you can overlay. what
And
is
model
the-
based on that. Yep.
Right, so but you have to start with something. So this
Right.
is something that we're starting with.
Okay, as long as we realize that we may take a 30 to 50% loss in revenue from the closing of Bass River.
Right.
But isn't that something that we also have to negotiate with the DHY for compensation?
Yeah, we're in the process of that now.
So this could be a projection upon which to base whatever compensation we get from them.
I didn't realize that they were compensating us for that. That's pretty exciting
Well,
news.
they should.
It is good news, yeah.
Is that a real thing, or is that just what we want?
No, there's going to be a lost revenue to us from the project. We just got to
Well, I knew that.
No,
That's
but
projected, that's actual.
from DHY. So we need to just come up with a figure that all works for everybody.
Yeah.
Also going to highlight one other topic here, which is again going to kick in sooner rather than later. Scott has obviously been performing miracles on an hourly basis with the staff that he has. But we're getting to a crunch point, I believe, where we need to make sure that our seasonal employees their comp plan is competitive. And other towns are forecasting a 5% increase in seasonal wages for the next 3 years to account for the rise in minimum wage. Now, this is excluding the impact of a federal minimum wage. Under current law, municipalities do not have to comply with the minimum wage requirements for the state. But if there is a national minimum wage law, that affects every municipal employee. So everybody would have to be raised.
Interesting.
So one of the topics here is because of the high fringe benefit cost, the average hourly wage for including benefits is it's like $45 per hour for full-time people versus the part-timers, which are even at 15 because they get no benefits. If you can manage your business with a tighter mix of fewer full-time relative to your seasonal and independent contractors, you generally have a winning strategy.
As long as we don't have a rate that's lower than every other town, so we don't get any selection in our workforce.
Yes, we are. Well, I sent you some of the other towns' information.
Richard, I think something else we have to take into account over the past few years on the golf committee, we've been advised that we've had a financial burden from part-time employees who work the summer and go to Florida and file for unemployment, and that costs us a lot of money.
All of these numbers, by the way, include the unemployment effect of seasonal employees.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
thank you.
Again, what I want to do is probably switch gears again. This exercise was intended to show you the sort of where we are today. It does give you a sense of some of the issues that we would have to work on. Let me see if I can switch to a different tab. I have to sort of move things around here so I can show you some of this stuff. So for example, this slide I showed you a little bit earlier, or it was in your package. This is how I've been trying to box in what is the right size for a 27-hole course and a 18-hole course, given all this information that's available from a lot of other towns. So that's, you know, these are just data points, not
Interview. You ready? Okay, wish me luck. I'm gonna
behind the scenes. By the way, this is an example of the loan amortization calculator. So
Hey, can we have a mute check and just make sure everybody's on mute who's not?
I just put, all right, so yeah, everyone's on mute except for Richard.
So what you see here is a set of calculations. You can put in the amount, the interest rate, and the term. It then uses formulas that are over here to calculate the interest and all of that sort of stuff. One of the things that's really important and pops out of this is our latest interest rate is 1%. And most of the analyses that have been done on future plans use a 3.5% interest rate. Huge difference. This makes a huge difference depending on what those interest rates are in the future. And then I guess, hold on one second, I gotta move things around again. Hold on. Come on, you move. There we go. What you see down below here is I start to use the formulas to combine different bits and pieces of the table. This is how all of that flows through to those summary pages that are where the capital plan is.
So you're doing a roll up on the reference, and then you're basically you're doing it cross tabs on the model, right? So you're fetching it from one tab and putting it in the other. That's good. This is really a lot of work, actually. So one of the things that I would ask is, like, if we look at that sheet again, one of the things on the budget projections, like if you look for 2021 and it's whatever the projections are, 2.something million, and then you go to 2022, it's again at 2 million. One of the questions that I think has to be asked, and I'm actually doing a little perusing. I went out and was reading the Town of Brewster's Golf Commission report from January 5th. They're doing essentially the same type of thing, but what they're getting to is how many rounds do they have to have at full price in order to meet budget, right?
Well, so let me sort of go back on that. The other thing here, can you see my screen again?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me sort of do share screen. I'm going to share this one. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to listen into the Board of Selectmen discussion. So
I didn't even know that there was one, so that's my answer.
Okay. So
this is actually really interesting. This might be one of the most interesting pages to me.
So what I did is as part of the annual and daily fee discussion, I broke this down. I provided all of the information that they needed. But I think the thing that sort of pops out at the bottom, and I'm going to go to the bottom and see where that's in a gray line down toward the bottom. Despite everybody's differences, the averages work out to about the same.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's thing one.
So that's pricing, but that's not capacity or volume, right?
But so then the real question is, what is the underlying demand? So people are willing to pay, and in COVID, we've had a lot more people paying that average $50. But that is a new phenomenon. Up until, for the last 20 years before COVID, it was basically flat. No demand. It was no increase in demand, and it was at a much lower level.
So did we make up all that extra money, that extra $1 million or whatever, just based on volume?
Yep.
Or was it based on price?
Just on
Volume.
And again, there's plenty of capacity. I think that's sort of the thing that, we talk about is, the capacity issue. But until we had COVID, capacity was not an issue.
Right.
Now, to put some other capacity sort of considerations out there, and I did send you another presentation that looked at Brewster as well as, I forget the other one I did, or Barnstable. It was a Barnstable presentation. And so the average course, 18-hole course, is pushing through like 45,000 guest rounds per year, or 45,000 rounds per year. And then there's a mix between those two.
Mhm.
So the other thing I looked at was the annual fee. Now, if you can see that. And again, what's amazing about this is despite all of the differences, at the end of the day, the average fees per round collected worked out to just about the same for everybody.
Based on what? That assumes a certain number of rounds per year.
No, not assumed. This is based on actuals.
Okay. So where's the round count then? We have the dollar count, but we don't know what the volume of the rounds are.
Let me see if I can. There is, behind the scenes, I have another set of tables that has all that information.
Okay.
So
You're
that's,
talking, are you basing it on the average rounds per member?
in the case of, I have the actual rounds. So I literally took the revenues, the gross revenues that were collected, divided it by the actual rounds. And I had
So
The actual
round data.
number of rounds by members?
Right.
So I do know that
Okay.
one discrepancy was with the round counter that we use. It counts appearances, not the difference between 18 and 9. So
Right.
like
So this is all just averages.
okay.
Right, so 9 and 18, everybody does similar types of things. So all it does is just take total rounds, 9 and 18s. Now, for a more sophisticated analysis, you might, 9-hole rounds are discounted 50%. And I started going down that path, and then I realized that the mix of 9s and 18s is fairly consistent across all of the places. So, it was just a more straightforward thing. Now,
So does it show that Yarmouth is the most expensive?
What?
Does this show that Yarmouth is the most expensive?
No.
It does not.
It's the highest priced resident rate, but
Highest price, most expensive.
Highest purse per round, cost per round too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and highest cost per round. Now, interestingly, if you wanted to, you could join Harwich for $1,111. Of course, you might not be able to play as much. I actually estimate their average fee per round about $35 to $40 because their members can't play the same number of rounds.
They don't have the ability to. They have too many members for the number of the amount of capacity that they have. And the same is true in
Right.
Dennis. Yeah. I think Dennis was up. I can't remember what the number was. It was something outrageous, like 2,100 members or something like that.
It's 1,600.
1,600. Right?
It's 1,600, and it's been stable for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
As opposed to Harwich, which is a little over 1,100, Brewster, which is about 1,200, Barnstable is about 1,200, Yarmouth has the least number.
What is our member count?
But it depends on whether you include or how you factor in. Let me see here. I hate to sort of. So we have, this is sort of looks at the categories, the under 19,
Mhm.
under 23s and so on.
Right.
So we've had sort of roughly the same number of members roughly, but there's been a significant shift of members into the links membership.
Well, that may change this year because they've changed some of the parameters. This year, as I saw it, that was one thing I wanted to bring up. you can't play until 1 o'clock on the links this year. And I never heard of that, or there was no discussion, and I saw it on an email today.
So again, so I do want to focus though, back to the capacity plan. So again, this is all data, these are all data points. And as you can sort of maybe have seen across all of the different tabs, I track all sorts of odd things like hotel occupancy. It just goes on and on and on.
So for the capital plan, then what we're seeing is essentially a list from line 30 to wherever the end is there, which are traditional sort of capital expense line items. Some of them have existing debt or existing debt service to them, right? Looks like those are the ones.
So we are at a point now where we're almost, other than the $2 million or the 1.68 million for the Bayberry Hills restoration, we're basically, that's it. We don't have a lot right now.
Okay, so then all the other ones, 32 through whatever, are proposed.
Proposed.
Okay, and so the amount of debt servicing that needs to be accommodated into this plan is basically reflected in column H for the 2022 budget, right?
Right.
And you're suggesting then that lines 32 through 35 are the first in the door in terms of those items, and I assume 36 through 39 being related to Bass River are going to be part of the wastewater project?
Right.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. I'm following along.
And
So
again,
then that gives us a different number to work with, right?
what?
It gives us a different number to work with in terms of how much money we need to cover, right? Our
Yeah,
nut
so-
just got bigger.
Yeah, so by the way, this is one of the things that we talked about. So one of the things I've done is I've inserted comments. So for example, irrigation rehab, 20-year life. So links, the last time that was done was 1999, so it's past due. Bass River was done in 05, so it's due in 2025.
Right.
Bayberry Hills is last done in 07, so it's due in 2027.
So does this sheet then reflect depreciation for those capital assets as well?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
This is really wonderful. Amazing work. I'm impressed.
So let me just go back to the slideshow. Gotta get rid of this. Put that down there.
So the only reason I asked about the depreciation is because that's actually a benefit to us, right? If we claim the depreciation. Right? So,
As a municipal operation, we don't pay taxes, and so there's not a big tax. Oh, yeah, by the way, there was a couple of other zingers that were in there. I also built in a negative factor to capture the interest cost associated with the cash balances as an offset to the debt, because you would obviously have the opportunity, depending on your capital structure, to use some of your cash to accelerate the payments. In other words, you pay down the debt faster, that sort of thing. So some of the implications, like I say, so essential capital costs really are a very big number, and really we have to make sure, in order to be sustainable, you would want to have that as sort of a minimum surplus level. Second thing, revenue is really uncertain at this point. It's going to probably take a few years to see the trend return. So I think, caution on the side, other than essential stuff, it sort of begs the question of, how much extra we should be doing. I already basically touched base on the wastewater project. We have a lot of questions in my mind, whether if we are going to, or when we go forward with this, we really have to sort of think to ourselves about fixing the Bayberry Hills shortcomings, so that when the wastewater program goes forward, we have to really be ready to have max utilization for that year. you know, so that we don't lose a gazillion bucks. And then again, this flexible expense structure, relatively low full-times to versus part-times in independent contractors, making sure our part-time comp levels are competitive, fixing this part-time benefit or excess benefit calculation that we have. And again, I think very smart thing that Scott's been doing is leasing equipment, because the future is really uncertain.
Plus
And
lease
Scott?
payments are deductible in full, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I got.
awesome work. So where does that leave us with next steps?
Well, a couple of things in my mind, and I'll let everybody else chime in. Obviously, I think, you know, it gives Scott a tool, as well as the GEC, a tool that we can now iterate and refine. It tells us where our, you know, by running the what if scenarios, what if inflation looks like that? What if that happens here? It's, you know, what if interest rates on our debt is less? It really sort of gives us some insight. What, you know, as we start looking at actual revenues that come in, it sort of will help us inform our decisions moving forward. So I think the next steps, continue to iterate the numbers to improve the inputs. We address some of the issues that have been already raised, including the excess allocation of the benefits. I think the part-time comp issue is going to bite us probably sooner, and probably need some action sooner. I don't know, Scott, any other things?
No, I think you hit it pretty well right now.
And at what point, at what point do we have to get back to anyone with regard to what we feel we can handle for the wastewater project?
I'm not positive on that answer yet, Ellen. As soon as I get word on when they might want to meet with you, I'll definitely relay the message. But I think Richard bringing this to the forefront is a good working point, and we can go forward from there and what they're possibly looking for, what they're not. I have a meeting next week with DHY on the other side on the revenue, possible loss to it. So I can ask them as well as what they're thinking.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Richard, I really want to thank you for grinding away with all this data.
My pleasure.
Might
Okay, I
one
got
of the benefits from the wastewater project be that because they're trying to do it in such a way to get a lot of really low interest or almost no interest rate loans, that our work on Bass River might benefit from that. Being able to tie into the fact that it's part of the wastewater project, so we can be part of their overall loan and get a really low rate.
Which, and I said this before, I was doing some what if scenarios. What if the interest rates were, you know, 2%? What if they were 1%? Your capital expense then really sort of goes down very nicely. So that is a very, very big question. Okay.
Any further discussion, or we'll just continue with this discussion next month and see what else we have for inputs before then?
Yeah, I think you just got to be prepared to possibly come in front of them. It is the DHY agreement there is on the warrant for the town meeting. So there could be, I'm not positive, there could be a meeting at some point in the near future.
I just think that with this tool, we are much better prepared to have those discussions.
They're always looking for specifics about costs and planning for costs and what revenues might be. This I think is something that your hard work is going to give them something concrete to look at, rather than the sort of the generalizations we've always dealt with in the past.
I had invited a member of the Board of Selectmen to attend our meeting this evening, but I guess he got held up.
Okay, I have to switch computers, so let me switch computers and I'll pick up with you in just a minute.
Okay. So now let's go back to number 3, which is the membership packet review that you all received. And I know Chris sent in some questions this evening, which,
Yeah, I've got some too.
okay. Do we want to go through it or what?
I mean, if you guys, I think I saw Chris, there's quite a few questions. It's probably easier to just list them all up and send them to me, and then we can get back with the answers to everything all at once to everybody.
Sounds good to me. Does anybody, so we are not ready to vote on this, but we got to get this ready
Well,
soon, right?
yeah, but there are a couple of things that might require us to think about as a group. For instance, calling it the rules, when actually throughout the packet we talk more about policy rather than rules. So just starting off, changing that word rules to policy and information guide. We almost never use the word rule throughout the document. Other than the
Agree with that for
page
sure.
3. And
I think we should definitely call it the policy and procedures.
Yeah.
That's what we always used to call it.
yeah,
Yep.
because policies are something that can be changed a lot. You say rules and it sounds like there's some
It's parochial.
somebody you got to go and bow down in front of and get permission to change.
Yeah.
It's a
I agree
softer
with-
approach.
I agree with Ted 100%. There are rules and there are regulations, and these are.
These are policies which we can change.
Policies and procedures, and these are policies and they can be changed, not the procedures.
Yeah.
So I agree with Ted.
Yeah, I would second that as well. The other thing that I would mention too, and I put this into my notes too, is like, does everybody understand? I mean, I don't want to, I'm not trying to assume too much or to put people in an uncomfortable position, but there is a pretty big difference between policies, standards, and guidelines. If you have any experience with doing formal governance programs for, in corporate environments, policies are things that are irrefutable. Like, this is how it is, right? A standard is a method for achieving the policy. Like, we do the following things, like we cash out every day, we do whatever, right? A guideline is essentially a standard that's not enforceable. Like, there's no penalty for it. It's just a recommended best practice, right? And one of the things that I observed in this was that I don't think that we're doing the best job of identifying what kind of policies are being changed or what kind of policy changes are being implemented. I think the identification part is probably equally important, because then we can actually have a discussion on it, right? So like the whole thing with membership payment plans, or with there was an item in the member packet about no golf carts being permitted in the parking lot anymore, right? Those are pretty significant policy changes.
That's not clear either, because it's only at Bass River and not at Bayberry.
Right.
And it's in the handicap section rather than in the cart usage section.
Yep, that's right.
I would like to think that that list of policies and procedures or rules and regulations, whatever you want to call it, was a starting point, because there are a lot of gray areas, and some of the gray areas are carts that are in an illegal area on the course, and both the operator and passenger would be giving a warning when the passenger is not violating anything. I think these are good starting points. I think we have to discuss them and change them to be more enforceable.
Yeah, because if you're a passenger and you don't like where the driver is going and you
What are your
say something to them, what are you supposed to do? Get out of the cart?
Right, sorry, I can't walk.
It goes there anyway,
Yeah.
and you're not responsible.
Yeah.
I know, but we gotta start
Yeah.
somewhere, and we've been so loose. This is.
Exactly, and that's what I say. It's a good starting point, but it's something that we have to discuss and bring down to something we can put into print that's enforceable.
Well, we can't, if we can't discuss in infinitum, we gotta get something that we can get out to members now to stop some of the wishy-washiness that we've had in the past.
So just to touch on that cart point real quick, is we do both, because if we don't see the actual incident, see the cart over there, we actually don't know who drove it. So it's both of the people. Like you could have, like, for example, Chris could have been in the driver's seat at that time and then slid over the passenger seat. So that's why it's both, but we certainly can change it. It's not the end of the world stuff.
What about the thing about the 90-degree rule? I don't remember us ever having that before.
That seems to be completely new.
That was strictly for handicap use.
No,
right?
but it's in the cart usage section as well.
Yeah.
It is. I saw that.
That's always been there. That's like a standard USDA guideline to follow the 90-degree rule.
Except
And all-
nobody ever does around here.
Nobody ever follows it. That's correct.
Not
But it's
just
a
during
standard
wet weather.
USDA thing.
Well, some of it. So I think the point here is there's also too that like things that aren't going to be enforced or that, you know, are not enforceable or that we're not even bothering to enforce. Like, you know, it's great that you have something in there to cover yourself, but I mean, at the same time, do you really want to go down that road? Like some of the things that are in there are not really, they're subjective. It's like whoever's interpreting it gets to decide whether or not it's a violation, right?
Yeah, and some people are going to see it and then decide that they have to follow it, and then you're going to start having people arguing with each other.
Yeah.
Well, you're not following the 90-degree rule, and that's what the policy is supposed to be.
You'll
Good
find
starting
the
point.
average person just does his own thing anyways, but at least when there is an issue, they have been notified of.
Right.
So the 90-degree rule can be easily solved as the discretion of golf operations. Is when we
Ellen,
put
the
that into
problem-
effect.
Ellen, the problem starts there with if you're going to enforce it sometimes or not other times, it becomes selective enforcement.
Yeah.
And that is a defense in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You either have to have a rule and enforce it or not enforce it at all. You can't selectively enforce a law.
But yeah, but if you put in the at the
Pause here.
discretion of the, of management, then if you've got a wet day or something like that, and you want to try and minimize
exactly what
damage
it's
to the
there for.
course, right? So then
It's at
people
the-
know that if they're told by the starter the 90-degree rule is in effect today, then they know to follow it.
Right.
Well, the
So I
90-degree
think
rule
that's a
is
good-
really only applicable to the handicap section as I read it. I mean, I don't know if that was
No,
just
it's
something.
in both sections. It's
Oh,
also
is it?
in the
Okay.
it's in the cart usage section as well.
Yeah,
All right.
Ted's correct there. I saw it in both sections and I'm used to the 90-degree rule and it's usually enforced on a damp day on
Yeah, on
at least
wet
private
weather.
courses.
Yeah.
Not 100% of the time.
All right, so we'll just add the piece at management's discretion, and that'll take care of that. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, that borders on selective enforcement again at his discretion. And that would be a defense at the criminal court.
I don't think anybody's gonna take us to court over 90 degrees.
No, but if it could become an issue sometimes. When you get somebody who's really wants to follow the rules, strictly, and they want to argue with somebody over not following the 90-degree rule, and they say, "Well, I'll have to tell the management." I mean, you never know what's going to happen out there sometimes.
Yeah, and again, I agree with Ted. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, but I agree with Ted almost 100% of the time now. I like to follow the rules. If everyone followed the rules, fine. But if I followed the 90-degree rule and 80% of the people didn't, I would feel put upon.
I'll rework the language for the 90-degree rule, but it will be enforced by us as we know when the course is too wet to let the carts go everywhere.
Yeah,
Now, what
No,
I've seen,
that's fine.
what I've seen other people do is when posted.
That would be fine when posted or something, and that's what I've always
That's
said.
right.
90-degree rule in effect today.
Yep,
I've
that's
seen that
usually
sign
how it
on
is.
many courses.
Yeah.
Yep.
We got it. Yep.
Okay, So why doesn't everybody make their list of any additions, edits, changes, whatever, submit it into Scott as soon as possible?
I noticed that, Chris, you had a question about using the Chelsea system. Because in here, it talks
Rep-
about using the Chelsea system.
Well, I thought we were on the new one, but apparently
Well,
that's not true now.
I don't know if we talked about it at the last meeting or maybe the meeting before when you weren't there, but the likelihood is that we will be able to still use the Chelsea system for member tea time allocation, and it'll get incorporated into the new system.
Okay.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
Chelsea.
so Chelsea T sheets will stay for member and advanced bookings and they get uploaded into Club Profit the night before.
Yeah. So the only part of the Chelsea system that worked is the one part we're going to keep.
That's correct.
And
And that's only probably for this year as Club Profit's building the same sort of thing. So once we get them having their own thing, we'll flip over completely. But this is a good bridge for us to get through this next season, as we ran into a few hiccups to get it up and running.
Okay, I'd like to bring up a question. This year, I did purchase a full membership for $1,200 as opposed to my Lynx membership last year. But I noticed in this that the Lynx membership is now reduced to 1 o'clock or later, 7 days a week. How did that happen with no discussion?
The Lynx pass is a restricted pass, and that's how it went into effect. And we actually have the control of the restricted pass.
But what Andy's referring to is the same thing that I brought up 10 minutes ago, which is that we need to understand what the policy changes are before they're implemented if we're going to actually have a discussion about them and advise this group, right? So we're making blanket policy decisions basically, and then coming back and going, oh, well, these are the new rules, or these are new guidelines, or these are new policies, and we're not really. I don't know that everybody's, up to speed on that, right? Or that we would all agree that those changes are beneficial, right? It would be helpful not only to understand what the policies are in advance, but it also understand what the reasoning is for the change, right? What's driving that decision? So
What was the policy last year? I know it was restricted, but was it just restricted to what was it, like after 12 o'clock in the morning or?
No, it was typically 10 o'clock. If I remember correctly, 10 o'clock in the morning during the week, and on weekends, it was no later than either 1 or 2 o'clock. And it may have been earlier than that, but there was a two-tiered system during the week and weekends.
Yeah.
But now it's not until 1 o'clock, period.
Every day. Yeah.
Every day. Now, we weren't aware of that. That was not brought up to us as an advisory committee. And as I say, it doesn't affect me because I have a full membership this year. But it may affect those people that have always had a Lynx membership.
Well, it doesn't affect any of us if we don't have a Lynx membership, except for the fact that we're the GEC and we're responsible for policies. Or at least we should understand why the policy is what it is.
We are only responsible for making recommendations, which
We're responsible for the fiscal
responsibility.
Except that's not what it says in here on the.
That's
thing.
exactly what I was pointing out, is that the manual it says that we're responsible for something that apparently we're not, right?
Yeah,
so
the manual says on page 4. Where'd it go?
it's in there. I know what you're talking about.
It says the Golf Enterprise Committee is responsible for setting policy for the town of Yarmouth courses. Policies are subject to change. Their meeting notices, meaning the GEC, are posted, etc. So we are, according to this, responsible for policies, and at least we should, if we're going to agree to a policy, we should at least be able to understand why the policy is what it is.
Or at least have some input or knowledge of the changes that are going to be made before they're made.
Right. So changing the links to after 1 o'clock is a big change from what it was last year.
Yes, it is.
And even though we don't play I'm not a Lynx member either, but it's our responsibility to look after the interests of other members, other, annual fee payers. And so,
Scott, was there a reason for this or just, it was,
Well, as Andy pointed out, Monday through Thursday, it was 10 o'clock because we just can't get over there quick enough. So 10 o'clock is when you can play over there Monday through Thursday last year. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was noon, as Andy pointed out. So this year, we just lined it up with the junior pass as it's a restricted pass to 1 o'clock.
Well,
Now, you certainly can vote on it in other ways, and we can have that discussion if you would like.
I'd like to bring up the point that the selectmen for years and years have always called for a low-cost option for residents of the town of Yarmouth to enjoy Yarmouth golf. And this links, one of the reasons for bringing it up was to placate them, to keep a low-cost involvement for those residents of the town of Yarmouth that want to play golf and can't afford the full membership. Now, going from 10 and 12 to a blanket 1 o'clock is a large change. And I would like to have some discussion about changing this and possibly going back. What I'd like to see is go back to the time constraints that we had last year. We only had 110 Lynx memberships. We're going to have less this year. I know at least 108 because myself and my friend are buying regular memberships. But I think it helps a lot more people in Yarmouth than it hurts by keeping that 10 and 12 that we had.
And likewise, I think there's the same sort of reasoning can be used about dismissing the payment plan, right? So
the payment plan has more to do with the fact that we changed the date to April 1st.
right.
How can you have a payment plan where someone could come in on April 1st and then give them 2 months to the end of
well, that's how it was last year.
June? Yeah, but now you're talking about putting it off into the middle of the season.
Well, I don't know what the answer is. All I'm trying to say is that with the analysis, I think, is the same, which is that you have to look at what are you going to lose or what are you going to give up by making the policy decision, right? That's what I'm focused on, which is like, okay, so if we do, let's just hypothetically game that for 1 minute only, right? So how many people am I going to lose if I make that decision? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, how many people do we have?
I would say probably none.
Okay.
Because it used to be when it was January 1st. All right, so I'll pay a third of the fee or half the fee in January, and I pay the other half at the beginning of May. But when April 1st is the starting time of the season, to give somebody the ability to have 2 months of play for a fraction of the fee.
It's not a fraction, it's half. So you're paying you're paying 50% of the fee up front, right?
It's 6 months. It's 6
And here's another thing to think about. If
you also could start running into
50% of the
trouble with
fee-
the end of the fiscal year. You've got to get the money in by the end of the fiscal year.
No, you don't have to. We have had many times in the past when part of the year was paid in the fiscal year and part of the year was paid in the calendar year. It really doesn't matter as long as we get that money. If it's spread out before the end of the fiscal year or the calendar year, we're still benefiting from the money. After the first change of fiscal to calendar year, the money still comes to us. But
And
it's
what about
a great
people?
assistance to members. And we are here to help the members.
Yeah, but I just don't see with the April 1st.
I'm sorry,
date.
Eddie, you're here in the best interest of the golf course. You're the golf enterprise committee in the best interest of the golf course.
And we're supposed to represent
That's
all
what's represented.
all the residents of the town of Yarmouth. They're supposed to call us if we have problems, and we're supposed to help them out. Our phone numbers were given out to town residents to call us if they had a problem with the course years ago.
It doesn't say that we're
That
gonna
They
has
better not
happened
ever
on
give
my
out our
watch.
phone numbers.
How-
And it never will.
Does it
I
hurt
don't even
you?
want them having
Does it
my
hurt
email
you?
address.
Scott, does it hurt you financially if they give you the money July 2nd?
Absolutely. We don't want it to cross fiscals, Andy.
And now you're into
That's ridiculous to think
season.
that that's a good idea. We cannot have it cross the fiscal year.
Okay, so April, why don't we make it April and June 30th?
Why would we do that when last year we closed it off April 1st? We switched the whole entire operating calendar, so it ends on April 1st now.
If it comes in the fiscal year, it's still profit.
Yeah, but
You are coming in on prime time.
It's not
we
any
changed-
different than how we did it last year, guys. I mean, it was.
It's
I-
completely different than how we did it
we're
last
also
year.
the only
Absolutely.
place that does it. Nobody else has a payment. No other town has a payment plan.
If you want a payment plan, put it on your credit card. If you,
Well, we knew that was going to be the obvious rebuttal. So that, all I'm trying to say is that it seems like a nice benefit for the townspeople. Seems like something we were willing to do in the past, and all of a sudden we made a policy decision, and we revoked those benefits, but we didn't have the opportunity to have a discussion about it.
yes, we did. I don't
No,
know.
We did discuss it at
We
one
did
of the meetings.
discuss it.
Well, I must have been not at that meeting. I don't think I've missed any meetings in the last 8 or 10 months, but maybe there was a different discussion that was going on somewhere else, right?
Yarmouth Golf has always been a leader on Cape Cod. We were the first one to offer a payment plan. Now we're the first.
We were the
one to
only
take
one,
away.
the
I don't
first and
know if
only.
anyone ever had it. It doesn't mean that it was a bad thing. It was a good thing. It helped out the people. I know it was a lot of work for the town, for the Yarmouth Golf employees to do it, but I still thought it was a good thing for people in the town. I love paying with a credit card at no interest. It's great for me, but other people, it might help them out to do it on a payment plan.
I think that it's past due for this year. We made we had a discussion, we changed the date, and we've made that plan. So you people want to bring it up again next year? We can bring it up, but. for
Well, I
this
think the
year,
point
it
that
is
we're
what it
actually
is.
making, Ellen, is that if we want to be engaged in setting policy or advising on policy, that it would sure help to know about it before it's implemented.
But
So having half of us implemented and then the other half don't have any idea about what's going on, that's a fail in my book.
I agree with that, but on
Right.
this plan, we did discuss it at a meeting. I'm sorry.
Ellen, it's not only this. This is something that I see as a trend now. This could have been a problem. The thing about changing arbitrarily the time to 1 o'clock, increasing it much more than 10 or 12, but going to 1 o'clock for the links. These are changes that are being made arbitrarily without discussion or input from the Golf Enterprise Committee.
They are not, the links, yes, didn't know a thing about it. Sorry about that. Not the policy on the payment.
Nobody's holding you accountable, Ellen. We're just saying as a group, I think
What I'm saying is I'd like to see a more open line of communication before changes are made.
So noted. Good
Can we,
idea.
the payment plan has been discussed multiple times. I've been putting it in front of you guys multiple times. And also National Golf Foundation recommended to get rid of it in their recommendations. We are simply following through on another recommendation from National Golf to be successful. Again, more of their recommendations being put into play. It's like the same thing we went in front of the Board of Selectmen for a fee hearing to put the same things in play as recommendations from National Golf.
So look, without getting into the individual issues, I think I want to elevate the discussion back up to the right level, which is that it is important for us to properly identify policy changes before they're implemented. And I feel like maybe there's multiple people here, including myself, who are saying that they don't feel like that's true. So if there's some help that's needed, or if there's, if it becomes a two-step process instead of a one-step process, maybe that's the adjustment, right? It's process. It's not necessarily, poking each other and saying, oh, I wasn't advised about this or the other thing, right?
So noted, Chris, and I think that's a fair statement that we have to make sure that changes in policy are discussed for our recommendations. Anybody got anything else, or can we move on? Do we have a director's report?
I do have one other thing. What is the status of a Lynx membership now for 2021? Is it still going to be no starting before 1 o'clock? Or can we discuss this and go back to something closer than what we had last year?
Well, according to what Ellen just said, she said that it's already a done deal and we're not going to open it back up for discussion, but I don't need to speak for her. You can,
I was actually talking about the payment plan, not the links.
Okay.
so what makes those two things different, just in my
Because
opinion?
we have discussed the payment plan. And
Okay.
we've gone to the Board of Selectmen and we've just set our rates, etc. So I think if you want to discuss the links,
The
And
link,
It would have,
the links
the
could-
link to this conversation would have
just
to
be a
happen on the
stroke of-
next
the
meeting.
links could just be a
Wait a
stroke of the pen, and Scott could make a command decision to say, okay, I'm gonna open it up to from 10 o'clock on Monday through Friday in
if
whatever.
this is
lasts
a
at
major
noontime.
item, if
I
this
mean,
is an
Scott
item,
has the ability to do that if he's willing to do it.
then we can add it to the next agenda item, to next month, if you'd
Scott,
like.
are you happy with that?
I don't set the agenda, Andy. Ellen does. If Ellen wants to do it, it's her call.
Well, actually, we all set the agenda.
So Scott, did you say that one of the reasons you changed it to 1 o'clock was to be consistent with what the, what it is for the, what is it, the junior membership or the where they have to play after, is it after 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock?
1 o'clock
1 o'clock. So you did it to be consistent?
with the restricted pass. The two
Right.
restricted pass are 1 o'clock. Yes.
So if one pass is restricted, make them all the same. Is that the idea?
That's not a pass, that's a, links is a membership.
Well,
and
the
you
They're
have
all passes.
they're all
They're all
passes.
passes.
What
to link
yeah.
it to the junior membership.
they're all
They're all
they're all
passes.
passes, and none of them are actually memberships. But the third membership isn't really used in the procedures.
Yes, it is.
You buy an annual pass. You don't buy an annual membership.
I don't know about you, Ted, but I buy a membership.
Well, you can think of it any way you want, but that's not what it says.
Right, and you have to have some rationale to link the links membership to a junior membership. There is no rationale to link those together.
It's a restricted pass. That's where we linked it. All restricted passes are starting at 1. That's what we did.
Why?
If
like
you
to-
want,
all right.
if you want to bring it up at the next meeting, we'll have to have the
Enough,
conversation.
Andy, we're not gonna keep going over this. We will put it on the agenda for next time. And we will discuss it. It will be on the agenda. Fair?
Thank you.
So does that mean that we're not making a decision about that until we've discussed it, or is it just this is post-mortem?
I love that term.
Well, we're not gonna make a decision tonight, apparently, because I think feelings are too high. We have to get some rationale between, unless you all want to vote. If you'd like to vote on how you'd like to see this happen, and put a suggestion forward.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that the links memberships tea times remain as what they were in 2020, meaning you can sign up for a round after 10 a.m. Monday through Friday in no earlier than 12 noon time on Saturday and Sunday.
It was Monday through Thursday, Friday through
Okay,
Sunday.
Monday,
was new.
okay, Monday through Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday at noon time. I'd like to see it remain as it was last year.
Somebody like to second that?
I'll second it. But anyway, I think what we're doing is we're discussing it, right? Seconding is opening it for discussion, or is it we're voting on?
It's a vote.
It's a
Okay.
vote.
I really would have liked to have had a different discussion about this before we voted on it, but I'm willing to support Andy's motion.
Is there
Maybe
any,
can we table the motion until the next meeting?
I would be willing to do that, to have some rational, intelligent conversation on
So
why we should have the hours of opening for the.
I move to table the vote until the next meeting. Does anybody want to second that?
all right, we have to have a roll call. Chris?
What am I voting on?
You're
Tabling the
voting-
motion to the
Motion.
next meeting.
Tabling the motion.
Yeah, I think we should have a better discussion about it. So yes.
Bev,
She's on mute. Hold on.
unmute.
Could be me. Hold on.
Bev?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm voting to table it till the next meeting.
Andy?
I vote to table it for more discussion.
Ted?
Table it.
Richard?
Table.
All right, I'll vote to table. It's unanimous. We'll put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Is that packet supposed to go out when the memberships are paid?
Yes.
Okay.
Theoretically, it should have, but we're willing to take your money right now.
Yeah, no, okay, well, yes, I know that. Okay.
Well, they don't actually get a paper copy of it. They just get to read it and then sign it, or they can look at it online.
Okay.
Do we have a director's report, Scott, or you just want to talk to a few items, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, Richard hit a lot of stuff already, so I'll just kind of update real quick. Just to update that we did go in front of the board and did get approved for the fees, 4-1. They did not vote in favor to do the recommended cart rate, so anything just went up
Yay.
5%. Ted likes that.
I'm saved.
For the RFP for the restaurants, I know everybody's kind of curious of that. I'm still awaiting decision from intern town manager, who's also the chief insurance officer. I really don't have any more information at this time right now. Someone got a question? Okay.
No.
Course conditions, well, they're a lot different now with the snow on the ground, but we were getting a lot done before the snow hit. We've been pretty hard in the tree removal at Bayberry. The tee got sodded around at Bass River. And then Bayberry, I don't know if you've been up there, but the driving range, the two top tees are dug up awaiting concrete when we can pour. And then we'll glue the new tee line right onto it. So that's kind of where we're at, but now we're just gonna keep going with tree removal when we can get back out there. For the POS, I think we hit this a little bit. We did kind of enter into a good agreement with Club Profit to use Chelsea. That way, a lot that everybody knows for your side is the same. Nothing changes. So keeps everything a lot easier. For us, the point of sale was the big problem on Chelsea. So this helps us as we enter into Club Profit. We do need to close, and with the snow on the ground, with a lot of storms, it looks like on our way for the next couple of weeks here. We'll do it when there's not a very good golfing day to fully transfer over from Chelsea into Club Profit. So we'll keep you updated when we have to do that. For the roof repair, that finally went out to bid, or excuse me, is going out to bid on February 10th. I think it needs to be out for at least 3 weeks, and then we can hopefully get that done in the month of March. And then we did place the order for a dump truck, which we expect in May. And then financials, Richard went over a lot of it real pretty good, but we are up $810,000 over the same time last year. That's the dip is due to the switch in the membership. We usually took in some money in January and February, but haven't seen much because we now went from April 1 to March, and the expenses are still pretty flat. That's pretty much all I got for what I got. It is February. There's snow on ground. We're all trying to regroup and get ready for next year.
Scott, have you filled any new positions?
We interviewed a couple people for operations assistant. We're going through the motions to hopefully fill 1 or 2 slots right now.
Okay.
And we did fill a role down in maintenance in late January. That was Jared's old position. We filled that role.
Good.
Starting to build the team back up.
Okay.
And also I will be, I didn't put it in, I will be meeting with Mike Berry, I believe tomorrow or the next day. He wasn't feeling very well the last couple days. about tournaments and getting those all scheduled for next year. So once that's finalized with him, we'll get that out to everybody as well.
So he, last I had heard at the end of the season during the season closer, but this had come up in the GEC meeting, I think in October or November, and you had said that you were going to take over all the tournaments going forward, and that was something that we should have been doing all along. Is that no longer the case?
No, we'll take it in like as they're running, but we're gonna definitely have Mike. He is the tournament chairman, if you will, to get them all scheduled that work accordingly for everybody. And then once they're there that day, we'll take it off his hands so that he can enjoy the time playing
That
in the
makes
tournament.
sense.
We'll take the rest.
Yeah, I think he would appreciate that. No, it's been pretty hectic for him.
Any other questions? I do have a question.
I have two quick things. One, in the policy pamphlet, you talked about when people checking in and having to, check in at the pro shop and get a receipt. One of the things about club profit was that was always talked about was the ability to check in because the use of tablets.
Yep. Yeah, we'll change that. You don't actually need a street. We just want to stress you have to check in. We've gotten a lot of people that just kind of go out there and play and then decide to check in when they feel like it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That can't really happen. It's a bigger problem at Bass River than Bayberry. But it's more the fact that, you need to go to the pro shop, check in before you can actually play golf.
Right. Okay. All right. I just wanted to, make sure that,
we need to know
that was clear. You need to know you're there, but yeah, I mean, that's the old system when they were doing it on the computer and they were printing out a receipt.
Right.
With
No, we
profit.
don't need the actual proof of receipt. We just need to have you check in. That's all.
Right. Okay. All right. And the other question was when you're listing of all the different block times. In the times you had for them, it didn't list the first tee time of the morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. It will be the first tee time in the morning.
Okay, because it doesn't say that in the one you just sent out.
Yeah, we'll update that. The best way for us to function and keep the leagues the way they are is to
and if you don't put it the first tee time in the morning, I can see a couple of the groups starting to try and debate what time they should be able to start. Some of them, weren't exactly happy about starting at 6:30 or whatever. So.
No, I mean, I know there's a lot of people, but for us and I think
I agree 100%. But
for the league to have that time and for us to get back to having.
But if it doesn't say it, if it doesn't say it, somebody is going to try and say, well, it doesn't say it has to be the first time. We want to start at 8 o'clock instead of 6:30 or whatever. And the other thing was you don't list the senior 4-ball team. Now, I understand it's not a league in this or a block time in the same way, but having been the captain of that team for a number of years, Jim Armitrout made it clear that he felt it was a group that had to come under the auspices of the town, that they couldn't run it as a private club. And he set aside a certain set of parameters in terms of who could be a member and how long you could be a member if there were other people who wanted to be on the team. And because it's not listed here, is that implication that they aren't governed by any town policies and they can do whatever they want?
I was actually unaware that was even occurring, to be honest with you, Ted. So I did not know about any of that, to be honest.
I know Ken Boyd is not keen on the idea of having to tell people if he has, 10 guys who want to be A players and he has 6 guys who've been there for years and there are 4 new guys who want to play, that, he's supposed to, according to the old procedure, to ask a couple of people to step down and go on a waiting list. But
Well, how about
we-
can you get that procedure in front of me and we can have that discussion to see what it all
Oh,
looks
sure, I got tons of stuff.
like? I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
Scott, I don't play in any leagues, and I do have a question for you. The league play, the block times have always been a financial thorn in the side of Yarmouth Golf. They have been for many years. People have often kowtowed to the leagues to let them play early in the morning, even during the prime times in the summer. If, as director of golf, looking at it financially, what would be the best time for Yarmouth Golf, for the block times or leagues, whatever you want to call them, to tee off? Not for the block times, but for the financial betterment of the town of Yarmouth. And if you don't know, if you want to think about it, that's fine. But I'd like to know what the best time you think would be for Yarmouth Golf for them to tee off.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a,
During the prime time, during the
Well, I
prime
mean-
time summer months.
we purposely pick Tuesday, Wednesday as those are traditionally the down mornings. This is why they're there. So the league question is a big question. I mean, they used to play Monday through Thursday. We're now down to 2 days. So I think we've done a great job of solving that problem.
Oh,
as a
yeah, you've
financial
cut it
burden.
down 50%. But the
Right,
question is,
but-
what's the best time for Yarmouth for them to play? For
Yeah, I
you?
think
2 o'clock in
right-
the afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that too, though. You can't really say that in the afternoon because, we get quite a bit of afternoon play. So
They're
I
all
think
at a
right now-
discounted rate, right? It's like $30 or whatever.
yeah. I mean,
I
I think right
always
now
find
where
out
they're
that
at
2
is a
o'clock,
pretty good
2 o'clock
spot.
in the
but-
afternoon was a great time to play because no one was playing.
Yeah, well,
at
that's
that
what would happen with the block times, though. No one would play.
So we were able to put the leagues back in
You
last
lose
year
no
because
money.
we noticed that Tuesday and Wednesday were down over there in the morning, which is why we were able to do that, is put that in. So right now, the way it is, it works pretty well for us.
I can tell you from my perspective, I've been invited to play with like 40 Thieves, and I'd love to go out with those guys, but there's no way that I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. to get the first tee time of the day, right? I mean, that's
Right,
asking
and
a lot.
that's the trade-off to doing that, right?
Right.
Chris, we have never
Part of that.
talked about this, but there's no way I'm going to get up to tee off at 6 o'clock in the morning either.
Yeah.
And I'd love to play with it now that I'm retired.
Anybody got anything else, or can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I just had one other thing to bring up, and it's we can reserve it for the next, but I would really love to see some sort of a similar option to what we offer for the links at Bayberry Hills over at Bass River. Like years ago, I know when my grandmother first got her first membership when I was a little boy, she got a membership that allowed her to, but only to play after 1 o'clock. And had certain restrictions on the weekends and stuff like that. But I think we have quite a few people that play over there that, they're staring at a $1,200 or $1,300 fee for an annual membership, and there's not really any sort of part-timers or type of product to offer them, right? And so
We don't have a membership, but we do have certainly the reduced fees after certain times. The break.
right, that's if you want to be a daily fee golfer, right? But then
Yeah.
so I was thinking more of in the terms of like something similar to, I don't know, I mean, it's just an idea, but
That
I'm thinking-
that came up, I think, a couple of times before you came on the committee, Chris. And one of the problems, I think, out in Brewster, they have later in the day membership and stuff like that. And
They call it the Twilight membership.
yeah, and what they found out was that their overall membership revenue went down because people were buying that membership. They decided that, well, yeah, I'd rather play later in the afternoon and I can do it cheaper. So they started finding a lot of people buying that instead of the regular membership.
Well,
It's
that's
kind of the
not-
problem that you have when that's one of the reasons why we tried to simplify the number of memberships that we had, is to
Right.
make it consistent.
Yeah, I
And
agree. We're trying to limit the number of memberships, but the idea of an afternoon membership does seem appealing to me. Richard, do you have any knowledge of the memberships or income to
can I
the booster
make a
courses
suggestion?
going down after that offer?
We're cutting into a discussion of this, and we just
I
set
would be,
rates and policies for this year, so I think we should put it on the agenda. Good question, but I think it doesn't belong discussing now. I think it belongs as we, in the fall, begin to
Well, maybe
start
we should do it before
discussions
the
for the
fall
next year.
because it
before the
turns
fall,
out
but
that when we start doing things in the fall, they end up getting, because we only meet once a month and then they have to go before the board and everything else. It's like the suggestions that Jay brought up when he brought them up, but by the time, you start bringing things up in the fall, it's already late in the process.
I think you should start to plan on membership topics in May and June, because a big thing that we went through the fee hearing was they kept bringing up nobody's around in the winter months. Nobody's around the winter
Right.
months. So we're going to take that and do our fee hearing in like August or September so that we can avoid that problem.
Yeah.
and I do have the data, as you might imagine.
Wonderful. I knew I asked the right person. Thank you, Richard.
So we'll
Yeah.
put it on the agenda for July or August to June, whatever you want to start, and we'll start
How
working on
about
this.
March?
No,
I
May
think
or
we'll have to get going, and then once that's over, we'll start on whenever you guys want to do it, but I don't think tonight is the night to do this one.
No, that's a good idea.
Anybody would like to make a motion to,
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
all in favor? Do we need a roll call for
We
this?
need a roll call vote.
You do.
Chris,
Yes.
Dev,
yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Ted,
yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Ellen says yes.
You have a date for the next meeting?
It's always the second,
Always Second Monday.
Second Monday. Yeah.
At 5:00.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
And Jay,
Bye.
thank you for sitting in for so long there, Chief.
Thank you, Richard, for all your hard work too. That was a great tutorial on capital expense budgeting. So,
Oh,
yeah.
There's more to follow.
Thank you,
Oh,
everyone.
no.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.